Okie dokie. Once you open your craft kit, you should have your handmade crescent moon frame here. You will have chosen one of these color schemes when you picked out your kit. Today, I think I want to make this one because teal is my favorite. Aside from that, you will have 2 bundles of wire, a thicker one, 22 gauge, and a thinner one, 26 gauge. This is for the chain links that I'm going to show you how to make. This is going to be to wrap all the colors onto the moon. All the colored crystals. I would recommend grabbing a small bowl or dish, something to hold your loose beads in, just so that if you bump the table, they don't go flying everywhere. That would be bad. And your crystal strand here, we're gonna leave this on the strand and we're just going to start pulling them off in order. So put this in a safe spot so that they don't drop anywhere, since we want that to stay in the original sequence. We are going to begin with this thicker wire here. So let's go ahead and unravel this carefully. Be careful not to poke yourself. Wire can be a little pokey, so just pay attention. Once the bundle comes loose, don't just, you don't want to just pull it any which way. I like to kind of undo the loops if I can. Just because sometimes if you just end up pulling, you will get a weird kink like that, and that's bad. And when you do get a kink like that, just reverse the direction of the curve. Don't just try and pull it straight. So we're going to straighten this out. We will be working with the entire length. So first, we're going to do this upper chain segment, link segment. So you're going to take your brass ring, which should have been wrapped in some cute mint tissue paper. So you're going to grab those, and we have these 4mm clear crystals here, and this bigger 8mm crystal, and these 2 copper spacer beads. Oh, thanks. So we're going to start off first. I'm gonna move the moon out of the way because we're not gonna work with that yet. After we make this part, we're gonna move on to some of the dangling teardrops on the bottom of the moon. So, okie dokie, off we go then. So beginning, we're gonna make a loop, and I usually like to start off with about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of length. So I will use my 2 finger knuckles here as kind of a rough estimate of how much to leave. So you're gonna start with a right angle, just like that. You're gonna move down a little bit, maybe like that far, and then you're going to do a half turn like this. I guess that's actually a little bit less than a half turn. Actually, let's fix that so it's a sharper bend. You're gonna put your pliers. I usually will pick a spot in my pliers and to make consistent loops, so somewhere in the middle. I'll always grasp in the middle of the pliers. You can take your fingers here and just pull to bring the wire to close the loop or to complete the loop. And you should be left with something like this. If your loop is a little bit wonky or something like that, just take your chain nose pliers and grip that and just straighten this out so that it's nice and straight like that. Okay, so we're going to, before we close off this first link, we are going to take the brass ring and slip it through just like that. Yee! Okay, so we're going to take the chain nose pliers now, and you're going to want to brace this loop by reaching across with your chain nose pliers without actually smashing where the 2 wires cross over each other right there. So you don't want to grip it right here. Actually, I'm gonna maybe hold it closer. You don't want to grip it on top of that, because if you smash down, they will actually cut into each other.
Want me to zoom in a little bit?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Thanks. So we are going to try and grasp the loop without actually smashing that cross section here. And you want to try and at least grasp a little bit of the other side of the loop, because if you don't and you try and start twisting it's just going to kind of rotate around like this. So you want to reach across the loop, grasp without actually, oops, clamping down on that section there. So sometimes I'll use my fingers just to give it a start. We're going to rotate it behind. You're going to take your other pliers. Round nose pliers will do in a jiffy, but if you have your own set, you probably have another set of chain nose or flat nose pliers that you can use. So we're going to start rotating behind and back around the front. And then I like to double layer the wrapping here, so I use my hands. Whoops. I like to do a double wrapping, so I'll take my fingers, and it's a really subtle direction adjustment, but I start to move this a little bit upwards so that we can start wrapping back up towards the loop there. So we're going to take the other pliers and complete that. All right, so on the other side, it looks like it has mostly covered that first coil. So we're going to snip with our wire cutters. I usually will cut about halfway into the barrel of that first coil there. That way, when we tuck it, we're just gonna try and, I don't know if you can see, I'm gonna grasp that little end and just push it in. All right, so we have made our first closed loop. Awesome. Okay, so now that you have made your first loop, we are going to thread this 4mm clear crystal here, 1 copper spacer bead, this larger 8mm crystal, another copper spacer bead, and then 1 more clear 4mm crystal. So you should have a printout that is life size for you to reference in case you're not sure which beads to grab. Okay, so now that we have those in place, let's continue the first thing you learned, which is making a right angle. We are actually going to give ourselves a little bit of room right here because you're going to need to make another coil like this. So we're going to move down a little bit, make a right angle, move down here, maybe that much, and do a half turn there. So it should look like that, and then re-grasp with your round nose pliers and just use your hands to bring the wire around. Take that off. And we're going to grip, we're gonna brace this loop here. This should be super easy since there's not something obstructing the way. And just use your hands and wrap around until the wrap comes down against this crystal, and we're gonna try and overlap and start moving upwards back towards your chain nose pliers. And then once it gets really snug, flush up against your chain nose pliers, time to snip. Just cut about halfway into the barrel of your coil there, and we are going to give that little end a tuck. All right, ta-da! You've made your first chain link. So I usually like to check and see if the loops are straight or aligned. Like maybe when you're done, it might look like this. So I'll usually hold one link and then see if this is facing the same direction, and if not, I will do that. And this might actually change later depending on how our Suncatcher hangs. We might need to adjust that, so. Okie dokie. Okay, moving on to this little drop that hangs down from the moon right here. I'm going to show you how to terminate or make a head pin, as they call it. So, to make a very simple head pin that's nice and functional, I take the very tip of my round nose pliers and just make the tiniest little bend right there. And then you're going to take your chain nose pliers and squeeze the that little U shape into itself, and then try and put them deep into your pliers here and give it a good squeeze just to kind of harden the shape. And we are going to thread this on, and now it has a little stopping point. So your crystal, you've just made your first head pin. Woohoo! Okay, so we're going to repeat the steps of making a loop here. So you're going to give yourself some space for that coil, the wire wrapping that we're going to use to close the loop. You're going to move down maybe about that far and do a half turn, and then reposition your pliers here. Use your hands to guide the wire around to complete the loop, and then up. And then we're actually going to grasp this just like before and start wrapping until you meet the bead, and then start moving back up to overlap the previous wrapping that we just did. And then once you get up to your chain nose pliers right here and there's no more room, that means it's time to snip. So I will usually cut maybe that much, and then that way we have a little end to tuck against the barrel of that coil there. And if you're link or something, if you hold it sideways and it looks like that, you can leave that if you want, or if you want it to be nice and straight, just grab the crystal and grab your chain nose pliers and then move it like that. Ta-da! All right, we have that finished. We're going to repeat that head pin making process for this teardrop. So we're going to make that tiny little bend again. I'm going to move this out of shot. And we're going to squeeze that closed just like that. And then grasp in the pliers, give it a good squeeze so that it stays in place. We're going to thread the teardrop so that the bottom of the teardrop is going to be the part touching your little head pin end, like that. So that should hold it in place there. And then we're going to repeat. So make a right angle, but give yourself a little bit of space to wrap some wire there. You're going to move down a little bit and do a half turn, and it should look like that. You're going to reposition your pliers and bring the wire around, change pliers to the chain nose, and brace the loop there while you wrap stuff around. All right, and then we're just going to repeat. We're going to start overlapping this coil, and we're going to snip about halfway into the width of that barrel so that we can tuck that end right there. And then we'll do a little check to see if this is straight. It looks okay. I'm just going to do a tiny adjustment. All right, we're going to do one more teardrop like this. So making the little end there, tiny little bend, and then take these and squeeze it closed, put it deep into the jaws of your chain nose and give it a good squeeze. And then we're going to thread, same thing, bottom of the teardrop, oops, goes against the little termination point there. Also be careful, since we're working with a full length of wire, that it doesn't whip around or whip you in the face, which has totally happened to me. Okay, so we're gonna make a right angle, but providing, giving ourselves some room for the wire wrapping part. We're gonna go down maybe this far and do a half turn. So it should look like that. Reposition and use your hands to bring the wire over. And we're gonna switch pliers. Grab your chain nose pliers and brace the loop, and then we're going to wrap, keep wrapping until you get down to the teardrop right up against there, and then you can start going back on top of previous coil. And then we are going to cut kind of in the middle of the barrel length there, and then give that a little tuck, and then you can check and see if your drop is hanging straight. It's just a little bit crooked, so we're just going to grasp that and move it like that. All right, and the last dangly segment, you're going to, let's start with the teardrop again. So same steps, we are going to make a head pin by making a tiny little bend there. We're going to close this and then put it into our pliers, give it a good squeeze. And then we're going to thread this last teardrop on there. You should be getting pretty good at making loops now. Okay, so give yourself some space for the wrapping. Make that right angle. You're going to go down maybe like 2 widths of, you know, your plier, 2 widths of your plier jaw, and then reposition and bring the wire over. We're going to switch pliers. So you're going to grasp that bracelet so that we can wrap this until it meets up with the teardrop, and then you can start overlapping and moving upwards. It's a really subtle change of direction for that. And then we're going to snip about halfway into that barrel there, and we're going to tuck that little end. It's just a tiny movement, and we're just going to check and see if this looks straight. Looks pretty good. All right, so we have 3 teardrops made, and then we just need this last dangling segment. So this is going to be a similar pattern as the link we made, that first link we made. So it's a clear crystal 4mm, a copper spacer bead, 6mm round, and then a copper spacer and another clear crystal. So we are going to start by making a right angle again. Let's give ourselves 2 finger knuckles of length again, and we're going to make that right angle. And then we're going to move down maybe 2 widths of our plier jaws, so that when you make a half turn it looks like that. And then you're going to reposition and use your fingers to bring the wire over. And if you see it's just a little bit off there, like the crossover point is over the loop, not over the straight section here. So you can just either open this like that so that they meet up there. That's probably the easiest way. Take one of your teardrops and hook it in, boink, just like that. And then we're going to brace this loop without smashing that crossover point there. Take your pliers and you're going to wrap behind, and then wrap in front, and then go behind. I usually do 2 wraps, and then I'll start changing direction so that it goes over itself, and slowly move upwards. All right, and then we are going to snip about halfway. If you have pliers that really, when they snip, they spring, you know, pieces everywhere, just grasp the wire without cutting it and use your hand to cover so that it doesn't go flying into random places of your home. Okay, so okie dokie, we have done that, and we are going to add that bead sequence. So it's going to be 1 4mm clear crystal, 1 copper spacer bead, this 6mm round crystal copper spacer bead, and another 4mm. Okay. And we're gonna repeat. So give yourself some room to make a coil to close the loop. We're gonna make that right angle. You're gonna move down maybe that far and do a half rotation, and then readjust your pliers, bring the wire over. And then we are actually gonna leave this, no, actually we're gonna close it because we're gonna wrap everything on later. So go ahead and brace the loop, and then wrap, wrap, wrap. Wrap until you get down to this 4mm crystal, and then you're going to start overlapping and going over that previous coil. And we're going to maybe snip right there. And then we're going to tuck that closed. And then you can take a look, hold your link so that you can see the sides of your loops, and if they look a little crooked, just grasp, and then you can push the link like that so that it's more straight. And then if they're a little bit turned like that, I don't know if you can see, but if this one isn't in the same orientation as that one, you can just grasp that, use your fingers, and just rotate, rotate so that they are facing in the same direction. Cool. All right. So now we are going to start with the fun, colorful part, my favorite. For this section, you might want to wash your hands, just because if your hands get a little sweaty or just your natural skin oils, it can leave fingerprints and smudges on your crystal. And then you have to go shiny it up later. Okay, so after you unwrap your thin wire, we're going to straighten it the same way. So don't just start pulling. You want to slow, you know, one by one, just kind of straighten each of these curves. You don't want to just start pulling it so it does that. You want to actually kind of reverse these looped up shapes. Okay, so go ahead and consult your photo if you need to for the spacing. We're gonna open the strand by pulling that wire straight, and you want to avoid pulling really hard this way, because this end might open up and then all your beads will go flying. So don't, this isn't like a really hard stopper. So if you pull too hard, it will actually just flip straight and then all your beads come shooting out. Okie dokie. So we're gonna take our first bead. When you first straighten this, there might be a tiny kink in there that you can kind of straighten by using your wires as a little crimper. Just kind of crimp it straight. You can rotate this around and just crimp. Okay, we're gonna take that first little crystal, and then let me consult my picture. Okay, so we're gonna start somewhere over here, and I usually like to have a little bit of length as leverage, so I will fold the wire over like that just to start, and then I will use that extra length to kind of brace while I pull this down and around. So I usually try and keep the pulling pretty close to the frame. Like, you don't really want to pull, don't pull this far away. You want the, what is the word? The leverage? You want to keep it pretty close to the rotation point. And then you can just start flipping this around Just be careful, because as the wire gets shorter and shorter, it becomes more like a needle. So you can totally poke your finger, which I have done many times. So be very careful. So you can start, once it gets really short, just to avoid like scratching yourself or poking yourself, just start using the wire to kind of press the end down like that. All right, and then if you need to adjust the placement, you know, this can move, so don't worry if it's not in the right spot. You find that you're wrapping and then you're like, oh no, this isn't in the right spot. Okay, so the moon is still open at this point. So usually I would go through the frame like this and then thread it around and then go through. But since this is open, you can just kind of pass it through there. Woohoo! Shortcuts. Gotta love those. Okay, we're going to take this first crystal that was on our pre-sorted strand. And if you'll notice, these crystals have flat edges. They're like a diamond shape. These are called bicones. So let's see if I can get it to focus. So there is a flat edge on there. So I try and line up that flat edge against the frame, and then once it looks like it's in a good position, I will use my other hand, and then we'll just slip this through. And I usually will pull straight down like that. So if you see the bead is in place there, so I will then wrap upwards, go around. Usually I would have to thread it through, thread it through, but since this is still open, doink, you can just do that. So we'll do one wrap and then we will put the next crystal on. So, okay. So same thing, it's probably a little easier to see, but there is a straight edge on this. Not sure if it's focusing, but. And then you're just going to put that through and pull down. Just like that. Not too tight, but you want it snug. But if you pull really hard, it could chip your crystal. So just make it nice and snug. And then for these round ones, there's no flat edge, which is fine, so it doesn't really matter what edge they're sort of braced against. Just follow the same steps. So you're gonna pull straight down and then go through, wrap around, and you can still, there's some wiggle room if you want to move these closer together. If you want to spread them apart, you can. So I'll usually tinker with that at the end if I feel like anything needs adjusting. I'm going to thread that through. Okay, and then this bicone, try and line up that straight edge against the frame, pull the wire straight down, and then just push this through there. All right. That looks a little far away, so I'm just going to scoot that in. Okay, so usually when I make projects like this, I will check in with the whole piece and see that our middle section, if you see the picture, you have the 3 big crystals in the middle here. So this looks kind of far into the moon, so actually let's scoot this down a little bit. I usually scoot by just using my nail and kind of getting into the coils there, and then scooting it maybe that much. Cool, that looks good. And then this portion is pretty quick. You're just going to do a bunch of wraps. Having the moon open on this section helps a lot, because then you can just do it really quick like that. Putting it through, and then if you notice, when I pull it tight, I'm kind of actually using my finger as a spot. So I'm using my thumb to pull the wire, and then my finger is wedged. Oh, sorry, it's kind of blurry. My finger is kind of wedged right there, and then I'll pull it tight like that. And then you just wrap, wrap, wrap. So let's check, see where we're at. Maybe a few more wraps. You can hold this against your printout of the photo and see. Maybe a couple more. Okay, I think that looks good. And then if you need to, you can always do the scooching, little scoot, scoot, scoot that I just showed you. Okay. Another bicone, so you want to try and line up that flat edge, because if you don't, the side of the bicone is a point. So if you put that point against the frame and then you pull down, it could get chipped. I mean, it won't break entirely, but we just want to avoid chipping precious Swarovski. Okay, so we're going to wrap that. And we're going to put a round, and it doesn't really matter what side the round is resting on. Okay. So same thing, make sure the flat edge of the bicone is braced against the frame, and then that looks a little bit closer to this end than the other side. So let's do some scooting. Scoot, scoot, scoot. All right, that looks better. This, I'm looking at this space here, should be just about equal. Okay. And this last crystal here, and then we're just gonna wrap. So it's nice when you have an open end here in your frame, because you could just wrap like this, which is pretty cool. However, we are about to close the frame, so and then we'll just have to thread the wire through every time. So okay, so once we get up to this loop right here, we are going to start doing like a figure eight. So you've just wrapped that. You're going to come around the other side, the top part of the moon, and then we're going to push this through there and pull it all the way through. Make sure you don't whip yourself or anyone next to you with this long length of wire. And then we are going to come back and wrap around the bottom side part of the frame. And we're gonna be wrapping this way. So make sure that when you wrap, it's not like on this side of the moon. We wanna have the wraps going in this direction. So we're gonna slip that through, just like that. And then we're gonna come back over this top frame and then slip it through again. And then we're gonna come around the bottom frame again and then push it through here. I'm gonna do this one more time. Okay, so now we are going to just wrap, wrap, wrap. Sorry, that noise is the wire hitting the camera. ASMR! Okay, so we're gonna wrap enough so that we can fit this 6mm bead in here. So we can't really fit it in there. It'll probably fit nice right there. So we have a few more wraps to go. So we're gonna wrap, wrap, wrap. So I just like to push it through this way instead of like sewing where you would put the point of the needle through. Wire behaves a little bit differently, so if you do it this way, you're less likely to develop a bunch of kinks when you pull the wire through. So, is that a good spot? That looks like a good spot. Okay, so we're going to take this next crystal, which is a round 6mm crystal. Thread that on there. All right, perfect. So I'm going to just brace with my fingers and hold that in place while I thread that through and pull it downwards towards the frame, and then just push through like that, like we have been. And I do one wrap, and then I start putting the next crystal. So this is another bicone. So just try and match up the flat edge of the bicone against the frame, and when you have that in a good position, brace that with your fingers and push the wire through the open part of the moon. Pull straight down, not super hard, just snug. And then you're going to, as soon as you pull down, you're just gonna immediately push through the frame again. And that'll keep your wraps nice and snug. And if they look pretty spaced out, you can just scoot them in like that. And we're going to line up that bicone so that's nice and straight. Then we're just gonna push that through. All right. Oop, almost dropped that, scary. Okay, let's do this. Make sure that that's lined up with the flat part of the crystal and wrap that around. And then we're going to do a few wraps here until we get to the center of the moon. Feel free to hold your moon up against your printout if you want to match the positioning up exactly. Or you can play around with the positioning if you just want to kind of do your own thing. Okay, so I think it's gonna be right there. So we have a few more to go. Wrap, wrap, wrap. Rapper's Delight. Isn't that like a hip hop song?
From before you were born.
Okay, wrap, wrap, wrap. And maybe a few more here. Cool, that looks like a good spot. I love this color. This is just a gorgeous color. It's called blue zircon, which is actually a gemstone. If you all know cubic zirconia was actually made as a synthetic version of zircon. Zircon is a really cool gemstone. If you ever find real zircon, it does this weird thing where it has like, when it refracts light inside the facets of the stone, it looks like double vision. Like, it's super cool. You should go Google it. I think it's called birefringence, for any of you that are curious about what I'm talking about, if you like stones like I do.
But that is not blue zircon, or that is blue zircon?
This is just Swarovski.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Making a Suncatcher out of real blue zircon would just be preposterously expensive. So, and then we're just gonna line that up here, line up the flat edge of the flat side of the bicone against the frame.
Maybe we should do it.
Do what?
Make a Suncatcher out of blue zircon.
Yeah, right. So expensive. It's a pretty rare, especially the blue kind. It looks a little bit off center, so let's do the scooching. We're gonna use your nail, or you're gonna use your nail, and then just kind of one by one, each coil. Just scoot these down a wee bit. One by one. There we go. Sometimes you get a nice big move like that. And then these are a little bit tighter. But usually if you go one by one, you get some slack. Cool. And then that way we can scoot this. There we go. That looks more centered. Cool. Okay. Sometimes this will happen just on its own. Your wire will form a weird loop and then you don't realize, and then you pull on it and you have a really tight kink. So if you do have a super tight kink while you're working, like tight like that, it's a pretty tight kink, just take your pliers and grasp one side and then just kind of reverse. You want to reverse that turn and it'll look like that, which is a little slightly compromised, but we'll just have to make do. And that does happen a lot when you're working with such a long length of wire. So before we continue, we are going to take one of our teardrops and we are going to attach it somewhere here. So if you look at where the top loop is of this, your moon is going to hang like this, just like in the picture. So that means you want your drops to be somewhere around here, like that. So as we are wrapping, we're going to wrap them in place. So it looks like this is a good spot. Feel free to use your printout. So we're going to thread this through. Is it through? Yeah. Cool. And then, so you don't want to wrap it super tight against the frame so that it doesn't move. You see that? So we're gonna actually kind of hold this maybe this far away and just in your finger pads grip both the teardrop and the frame right there, and then pull the wire straight up so that you'll be left with a nice little portion, little gap like that, and then push the wire through just like we have been. Keep grasping to keep the distance there, and then you're going to wrap around, and now it's in position. Yay! And then there's still some leeway here if you want to scoot things around a little bit. So we're going to wrap. Okay. So usually I'll check back in. If this is the hanging point here, straight down, that means your middle teardrop will probably be placed right there. Okay, so we got a few more wraps to go, or maybe more, like a couple of wraps. Okay, that looks good. So you're gonna take your middle wrap here, or sorry, middle dangle teardrop thingy, chain link, and we are going to repeat. So just give it some space, maybe that much room. Grip both the frame and the teardrop in your finger pads, and then just pull straight up and push the wire through, pull it through the frame, and then go straight down, and you should be left with something like that. If you accidentally pulled really hard and then you end up with something like that, just make sure you check back. Lots of checking back when you're doing wire wrapping. You can actually just kind of pull, and then you will be left with some movement there again, and then just brace with you can actually just hold the actual wire wrapping, and then keep that in place while you continue. And then once you continue wrapping the frame, then it's basically secured. And then don't worry, if it doesn't seem like it's lined up well, you can still scoot it along if necessary. Oop, here we go. Here's one of those kinks I was talking about that just naturally happens. So just make sure you reverse that in case we still need that length. Okay, so we are going to see if this is a good spot for maybe a couple more wraps, and then we also need to start wrapping the other side of these here. So let's go ahead and put this on. So let's hold it maybe that far down. We're going to grasp both the frame and the teardrop and push the wire through, pull straight down, and you should be left with a little spot like that. So now we are actually going to add the last few crystals here. So don't forget to try and line up the flat face of the crystal against the frame and just continue wrapping. Grab the next crystal. Woo! Almost there! Yay! Oop. Gonna line that up. Okay, so let's see, it looks like it's a little bit close, so let's scoot these closer together and then maybe scoot that down. Which sometimes you will need to do, which is pretty normal. Lots of adjusting when you make jewelry. Well, wire wrap jewelry or any of this wire work stuff. All right, last crystal. It looks like it's still a little bit snug, so let's scoot a little bit more. Cool. Okay. And then to terminate the wrap, you're just going to wrap the same way, but we're going to line up the wires right against that previous wrap end. Try and keep it nice and snug, and if it's not snug, you can just use your nails and kind of press the coils together. So if it ends up being kind of far away like that, I usually do 4 or 5 wraps. I'll show you. Okay, so on the back side, I try and cut it on the back side, maybe like that long, so that there's a little nub there. And you're just gonna kind of press that and rotate with your pliers so that's tucked in. And then you can just use your fingers, scrunch those together. Scooch and scrunch. Okay, and since we did do some adjusting, if you see that these two spots are closer together than these two, just go ahead and slide that middle one down so that they're evenly spaced. Oops. All right, that looks better. Okay, and the very last parts. So there is an opening. Let me move these. Opening on both of these. So you are going to grab this half of the loop. Don't grab the whole thing. You just want to grab on this open side here where there's an end. So you're going to grab that side and just brace this part with your fingers and just press down enough to where, I don't know if that's a focus. See, now there's a gap, there's a small opening. And we're going to hook this in there. So just put that in like that. And then you're going to grab that same half, this half of the loop, and just grip this nice and tight and press it back into place. Ta-da! Ding-a-ling-ling. Okay, and then the same thing with this side. You're gonna grasp this half of the loop and try and grip this tight if you can, and just, you could pull upwards or you could push down. You could push down this way if you want, but if you pull upwards or push down, you should have a gap like that. That way you can just slip that in and grab this half of the loop again, as close to the end as you can, and then press that back into place. All right, yay. Here, let's take a look at your finished work. Great job. So now, oops, your finished moon should look like this cute little guy. Isn't that cute? So if you have a window that has some direct sunlight shining in, it's really sparkly and pretty and shoots little rainbows all around your walls. Hooray! So the last thing we do is I will test and make sure that this link, that the loops are facing in the right direction, so that your ring isn't like facing the wrong way, so that when you want to hang your sun catcher, it's like hanging the wrong way. So that looks right. This should naturally, so it shouldn't, you'll feel the resistance, like it naturally wants to be in this position. So this is this.
Are you stretching it between your two hands right now a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. I'm pulling it taut. So this is a front-facing loop. This link, if you notice, the loops are facing the side, and then this brass ring is a front-facing loop. So this is just the natural position that chain links want to go in. So yep, there you go. You're all done.
What happens if they try theirs and it's not straight? What do they do?
Oh, like it's say if your links are a little bit off, like that maybe, so that when you hang your moon, it's going to be kind of slightly tilted. You can just grasp one side. Sorry, trying to get it to focus. Grasp one side and then just turn in whatever direction will make these face align, make these aligned straight like that. And there you go. All right, thanks for watching. Hope you had fun. We'd love to see your work. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook. Send us some pictures, that's always fun. We'll be sharing them in a YouTube video, all of your guys' work. If you want to see more.
Oh, that's if you want us to.
Yeah, if you want us to share your work. We would love to. Subscribe if you want to learn more about sun catchers. Eventually, we will be covering how to make some more complex things.
The subscribe button is down there. And,
this is what Mike has been working on.
In a separate tutorial, we'll be showing you how to make this in a separate tutorial.
Subscribe for more Suncatcher tutorials. Eventually we'll be teaching some different techniques and some of our more complex stuff. So, and please like our video if you want to help us out a ton. Thanks guys. Thanks for watching. Bye. 19 by T3. So excited about this new polish I bought.